In a lot of ways, this issue was one big experiment at the time. I don't think anyone would have imagined back then that this comic would play such a pivotal role in the history of comics and pop culture. I say experiment because during the time of this publication, 1938, comic books weren't really a thing. Newspaper comic strips were really the dominant form of sequential storytelling back then. They were actually such a huge part of entertainment that newspaper comic strip creators were looked at as celebrities of their time. If you had a hit strip back then, you were made very wealthy by it. But since this was the end of the Depression era, many people would have loved to become rich by creating the next big newspaper comic strip. That includes the two young creators of Superman, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. Originally dreamed up by the two while they attended high school together in Ohio, Siegel and Shuster shopped the character of Superman around to many newspaper syndicates, but to no avail. Finally, in 1938, Detective Comics, which later became known as DC Comics, agreed to publish their Superman character and introduce him to the world in Action Comics #1. But comic books back then weren't what they are today. They were essentially just anthologies, collecting and reprinting popular newspaper comic strips of the time. That's why Superman is only one of the many stories featured in this issue. It's interesting to look through this issue because in a lot of ways, it's like a snapshot of the golden age of comics. Not only the types of characters and stories, but the styles and overall kinds of visual storytelling. Looking through this golden age artwork more closely and dissecting it in a way that I haven't really done before allowed me to wonder more about the creation of this stuff. From what I gather, original comic art back then was drawn bigger than it is today, roughly 13 by 19. And as I understand it, before 1967, most comic art was drawn at that size. It wasn't until 1967 that the industry standard changed to the 10 by 15 drawing area that most of us are used to today. That means there would have been a lot more real estate on these pages back then, allowing artists like Joe Shuster to really let the ink flow and make sure as much detail as possible remained on the final printed page. Printing back then was in a much more primitive stage than it is today. And because of that, artists needed to draw things as clearly and boldly as possible in order to account for the inevitable loss of detail that would occur after printing. This is the true DNA behind what we call the comic book style. Feathering on hair and drapery, strong outlines, black spotting, bold lettering. All of this is a product of the limitations of printing back then. At first glance, I think it's easy to overlook the skill that went into these pages, just because of how far comic art has come since then. But when you put it into its proper perspective and think about it in the context of where the medium was back then, there's a real appreciation that comes about. The more I look closely at these pages, the more I wish I could see the original art and what that might have looked like in person. Like I mentioned before, it's likely that it was drawn at a larger size, something closer to probably 13 by 19. Also, I saw online somewhere that this original Superman story might have been formatted into comic pages from what might have been the original comic strip that Siegel and Shuster were shopping around. I don't know if this is true, but the way the story is structured in these consistent 3 tiers per page suggests that might have been the case. For the sake of best trying to utilize this sketch cover, because I think it's a pretty cool one, I did it at the exact size that the panels were featured in the story inside. But perhaps in a future video, I could do another recreation of Golden Age era artwork and do it more at a size that was likely being used back then. So if you'd like to see me do another Golden Age era style recreation and study, but drawn at a bigger size, let me know in the comments below and I could throw that into a future video. Speaking of this particular sketch cover, I also drew on the back of it. It's a panel study and interpretation from one of the other stories in this issue of Action Comics. A beautifully drawn story by another fantastic Golden Age artist, Bernard Bailey. I talk about some of the artwork from that particular story, as well as some of the process behind this particular recreation and homage over on my Patreon. If you're interested in watching that, plus a whole bunch of other process videos, bonus footage, and stuff I don't post anywhere else, check out the link in my description to sign up. Hope to see you over there. Anyway, that's all I got for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions or comments about Golden Age stuff or anything you saw in this video, please do leave them in the comment section. You can find all relevant links in the description of this video. And I think that's about it. So thanks again. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.